You're listening to the Vibrant Vision Podcast, a podcast designed to help you get clarity, increase your confidence, and cultivate the most important connections so you can have the impact you were created to make. I'm your host, Amanda Kerrigan. Now let's get to making that vibrant vision a reality. Hey there, this is episode 17 of the Vibrant Vision Podcast. Welcome. And today we are wrapping up our series on confidence killers with a big one, and that is other people. This is a really hard one because it's one that is largely out of our control. A lot of the confidence killers that we've covered during this series have been things that have been in our control. I'm not worthy. I don't measure up. I'm not a courageous person. There's thoughts that we have about ourselves, but this one is a little bit more touchy. It's a little bit more difficult to address because it's not just a shift in mindset or a shift in thinking or a shift in belief, but it's a shift in the way that we relate to other people. This is something that I have personally experienced many years ago, and it's something that I still deal with. There's a reason that I'm a confidence coach. I always say this, and it's because I have had to struggle with confidence. I mean, I've earned my street cred in confidence because it is something that I have had to struggle with. So years ago, I had a dear friend of mine. Her name was Naomi. We'll say that's not her real name. And she was incredibly generous. She had one of the biggest hearts that I have ever encountered. She was an amazing cook, and she was probably the best party hostess that I have ever met in my life. In short, she was a lot of fun to be around. But she was not happy with her life, and it bled out in her negativity. I would share something that happened to me that was good that day, and she'd be like, yeah, well, at least things are happening for you. And I always felt guilty. I felt like I couldn't share with her. I couldn't tell her things that I was struggling with because she made fun of me. And I quickly learned that she was not a safe person to share with. And she must have sensed that I was withdrawing from our friendship because she became very mean and very controlling. And eventually I had to end this friendship. This was many, many years ago. But it still makes me sad to this day because she was such a wonderful person. And it took its toll on my confidence. So today we're going to talk about the lessons that I've learned in navigating these tough relationships, because my friendship with Naomi isn't the only friendship that I've had to end, but it's something that I've gotten a little bit better at, is addressing these issues before you have to get to the point of ending the relationship. So like the other confidence killers that we've covered, this might show up in different ways. Everybody is different and every relationship is unique. So how does this show up? The most obvious is you can't do that. You're not capable. There's just no way that's going to happen. And if you have a naysayer in your life, you might stop sharing your dreams and your goals and your plans and your victories with this person because they just don't believe in you, or you're not getting that sense. Maybe they do believe in you and they just want to protect you. A lot of people who don't believe in themselves are protective of others because they say, well, if I can't do that, she's not going to be able to do that, and I don't want to watch her fail because that's going to hurt me. So there's a lot of compassion that has to go into looking at these people and not just saying, oh, he's a jerk or she's mean or whatever, but just saying, hey, there's probably something else going on underneath the surface that is making this person say, you can't do that. There's just no way that's ever going to work. The next is offering unsolicited advice or opinions. I had a friend years ago, again, who would always say, you know what you should do? And it was like exactly the opposite of what I thought I should do. And we're still friends to this day because We're still friends to this day because I learned to say, why do you think that? Because I learned to challenge and say, why do you think that? And then just say, here's what I think. So there are healthy ways to address these. And we're going to talk about 3 big ones that you have to know how to address. But it took me learning to challenge this friend because her opinions were valuable to me, but they were not always things that I had to agree with. So when they offer their opinion, then you can say, okay, thank you for your opinion, and then not take it. You don't have to take their opinion. The next one is people who tell you how you should feel or behave. This one is absolutely not okay. You shouldn't feel that way because. You shouldn't feel hurt when I say this because. That's kind of abusive. Actually, let me rephrase that. That is flat out abusive. If somebody tells you you shouldn't feel hurt when they did something hurtful, that is abusive and it's not okay. Or my other favorite, you're too emotional. You shouldn't have the emotions that you have. That erodes your confidence and it erodes your self-worth. It erodes the validation that you have for yourself. And that's really when you start veering into unsafe territory. The next one is people who dominate the conversation. These are the people when you're telling them about your really tough day and they're like, oh, wait till you hear about my day. Or when you're telling them about an experience that you had, well, that doesn't stack up to my experience. They're always trying to one-up you, or they want to tell you about their experience. And I had a friend who said, you know, girl, because I just had to walk away because I could have told her that my leg had been amputated and she would have been like, you know what would happen to me? I had the worst paper cut in the history of paper cuts. It's all about them. And this erodes your confidence because it makes you feel like you're not valuable to them. You feel minimized, invalidated, and empty after you interact. Finally, the person who is a know-it-all. They know everything. You can't share something with them or tell them an idea you had because they already know A, why it's not going to work because they're also a naysayer, or B, they don't need your advice or your opinion, or you know, I think that might not work because, and you just want to help them, but they're like, oh, no, I already know. Or they'll talk over you. So this person can kind of veer into giving unsolicited advice as well because they're like, you know what? I already know this. They turn out to be wrong, and then you question yourself because they act like you have nothing to contribute. How do we overcome when our confidence is eroded? First, we have to have a healthy relationship with ourselves. There's a reason that I included this in the series, but it was the last thing that was included, and that is because if we cultivate our own self-confidence, our own self-worth, our connection with who we are, then we will have a healthy relationship with others. When Jesus was asked, which is the most important, the greatest command, he said, the first is this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength. And the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. And even if you're not a believer in Jesus, even if you're like, he was a great philosopher or prophet or whatever, there is truth in that. We must love the people we encounter as we love ourselves. So what happens if you don't love yourself? What happens if you hate who you are? If you feel like you have nothing to contribute? Well, I'm going to tell you, you won't be able to love others because we love ourselves and then we love others out of the overflow of that love that we have for ourselves and for, more importantly, God or our higher power, whatever you believe in. You have to have that love before you can love others well. We have to love ourselves enough to not accept disrespect from others, to set boundaries, healthy, respectful boundaries. When other people want to push their unwanted thoughts and opinions and their naysayer attitude onto us, because we need to know that what we have to offer is just as important, just as valid, just as worthy, just as necessary as what others contribute. This is probably a whole podcast series in and of itself, how to love yourself and love yourself well. However, I would say that loving the challenging people in our lives means that we have to have radical love, radical respect, and radical compassion for ourselves so that we can then extend that radical love and respect and compassion to the people that we encounter. There are lots of ways to do this. So one is to list out your strengths. What are you good at? What do you bring to the table? Another is to identify your values. What do you value? And another is just to say, hey, I have this experience and I bring this to the table. Again, going back to that imposter syndrome that we talked about last week. What do we do when we feel like we're not worthy? We go back and we list out the things that make us who we are and that we bring to the table to help others. If you need some help with this, again, book a clarity call with me. I'll put the link in the show notes so that you can learn to love yourself well, because this is really the root of self-confidence. Sorry, but you have to address the issue. If somebody is doing something to erode your confidence, to kill your confidence, if they're digging up your confidence by the roots and you've planted some beautiful flowers and they just keep digging them up, then you have to address it. And there's a really simple way to do this. It's hard to do, but it's a simple formula. And that is name their behavior when you, and then remember when we said name it to tame it? When you, I feel. In this case, it's just letting another person know how you feel and how their behaviors and actions are affecting you. So for example, when you interject your thoughts when I'm telling you something, I feel like you really don't want to hear what I have to say. When you tell me what you think without asking my opinion first, I feel like you don't value me as a person. I'm telling you, when you do this, people are going to respond because it's not attacking. Don't say, when you're a jerk, name the behavior. Tell them what they're doing. Don't attack their character. Having these conversations is incredibly hard to do. It is extremely difficult, but it is necessary if we are going to grow deep roots and deep connections with the people that we need and want in our lives. If the other person cares about you, they're likely to apologize and say, how can I do better? What can I do differently? I had to do this with a couple of people I am incredibly close to. And I spent a week and a half dreading the conversation, putting it off. And it did damage to my relationship with them because I put it off. But when I finally had the conversation, a weight was lifted. We are closer now than we were before I even had this conversation and I identified what was going on. It was a conversation that I walked through with a coaching colleague because I knew it was going to be difficult. And I wanted to get her feedback on how I was presenting and what I could do differently. And I also prayed for these people. Before I had this conversation, I was praying every day for their hearts that they would receive what I had to say and that I would receive what they had to say. And you might have to have that conversation multiple times because behaviors are hard to change. If they were easy to change, frankly, I would not have a business as a coach because that's basically what I do. We work on behaviors. We work on how are you showing up in the world. So it's hard to do, but it is necessary. So be patient with people because they're trying and believe that people are doing the best that they can. And especially if this relationship is important to you, continue to have that conversation. And finally, like I talked about before, you might need to end that relationship. If it's not healthy, if they are not changing, they're not willing to change, if you address the behavior in a healthy way for you, and it's just not acceptable. And especially if they're abusive and you're not safe. And I don't just mean physically safe, but emotionally safe, psychologically safe, financially safe. You have to be safe in your relationships. This is a last resort and not something that I recommend and not something that you should take lightly. But sometimes it's necessary. I would encourage you not to end a relationship without first following the first 2 steps that I gave you. A, love yourself. Is there something about you that is contributing to this relationship? Address it. And B, tell them how you feel. Be patient with them. Tell them again, hey, I feel hurt when you interrupt me. You can't expect somebody to change a behavior if they're not aware of the behavior. So it is on you to address that behavior first. If it's a marital or family relationship, please do not end it without first getting counseling. I have a dear friend who had to end a relationship with a parent, and she got years of counseling before she said, I cannot do this. It's not safe for me to be around this person. Give it your best shot. But sometimes, if somebody is undermining your own character, it has to be done. I've ended several relationships, and they've all been painful. All of them have been painful. I don't regret ending them, but some of them I regret the way that I ended them. Some of them I waited too long to end, and some of them I didn't wait long enough. So get wise counsel before you do this. And please do not just ghost someone. Stop responding, stop communicating. It's confusing, and it can actually undermine their confidence because they're like, wait, what happened? You have to have a conversation. So in this series, we've covered a lot of confidence killers. And it's a whole other dynamic when the confidence killers are the behaviors of the people we're around. I hope this episode gave you some ideas of how to identify somebody who is not helping your confidence and then to address that in a respectful way. Maybe it's something about you. Maybe you need to love yourself more, and then you can love the people around you better. And again, if you do need to end a relationship, because of unhealthy patterns that are not changing, get some wise counsel from somebody who's been there, from a counselor who's trained before you end that relationship. You do not have to let you or someone else destroy your confidence. I just really want you to know this. You do not have to suffer with these confidence killers anymore. It just starts with a single act of courage. So as we wrap up the series and we go into a new series next week, I want you to think about what is one thing that you are going to do differently to ensure that your confidence is cultivated, not killed. So what's that one courageous thing that you need to do as a result of this series? Do you need to change a behavior? Maybe determine that what someone else thinks isn't going to determine who you are. Or you're going to choose to take a courageous step. Are you going to choose your own path instead of doing it the way that everybody else is doing it? Are you determined to embrace your own self-worth? Are you going to cultivate the connections with the people that are going to help you achieve your vision and boost your confidence? Are you going to work on overcoming imposter syndrome? Or maybe finally speak your truth and set some healthy boundaries. Let me know. My email address is amanda@vibrantvision.coach. You can email me. You can book a call with me at the link that I'll put in the show notes. Let me know what you're going to do differently to boost your confidence, because I love to cheer you on and support you. As we wrap up, I just want to say that you can be the most confident you that you've ever been. You do not have to be the same scared person, and you can set healthy boundaries. I'm super excited for our next series next week, And if you need anything from me, please, again, send me an email, amanda@vibrantvision.coach. I will see you on our next series next week. Thank you so much.